to another grand adventure of SeaWings. In this episode we're going to cover off a lap of the Hauraki Gulf that's been on my bucket list since I was a teenager. In this lap we got out to Great Barrier Island, got down to Coromandel, Waiheke and Rangitoto. On the way we saw dolphins, whales, sharks, we caught a kingfish, and we had a variety of adventures including a hike, some hot pools, messing around on electric scooters, and a less positive trip to A&E after a bee sting, and some adventurous sailing on the second to last day. Day one started out light with a couple of hours of motoring out through the Gulf. As we approached Waiheke we saw a school of kahawai that we chased but failed to catch any, and then with the breeze building we headed for Great Barrier. On the way past the ahas we hooked into a nice kingfish which fed us for the next few days. As we headed out across the Gulf, the breeze built beautifully into a nice tight reach, with us clipping along at above 7 knots consistently and regularly above 8 knots. A very close range jelly. On the way out there was a great rendition of 99 green bottles which lasted the full duration. And then as we approached Whangaparaparā we were met by a large pod of dolphins, probably over 100 animals, spread across several hundred metres around the boat.
Oh look, that's just right here. Oh, that's pretty special. You don't look at all the pods. Yeah. Oh, look at the bow.
We got to watch the adult males showing their skills, and we also got to watch the females bringing their young and teaching them how to surf on the wave in front of the boat, which was absolutely awesome to watch. Yeah, they are just the nicest animals. Day 2 dawned wet and miserable. Yep. So it was mahjong and chocolate in the boat whilst we waited for the weather to clear. When it did clear, we took a hike up to the hot pools above Whangaparaparā and had a great relax in the very muddy hot pools. On the way back down, we liberated a couple of lemons to help us with our raw fish salad, and then picked up some coconut cream on the way past the Whangapara Lodge.
That's pretty good.
On the second day on barrier, we headed towards Port Fitzroy, again with very little breeze in the morning, so mainly motoring up towards Port Fitzroy.
Hello?
Yeah,
Are you able to take a photo?
I am.
Tina says little barrier looks like a crocodile right now. That way.
Oh, yes, it does. What crocodile?
Take a photo, please.
Oh, of that, not of you guys.
Crocodile.
Right. As long as you
I want a
don't,
photo of the crocodile.
as long as you don't smile at it. Because you should never. Eight green crocodiles sitting on the wall.
We stopped off at Smokehouse Bay for a couple of hours and enjoyed some swimming and some exploring.
Standing on the hill just looking down at Smokehouse Bay. That's the bathhouse. Communal gathering spot for the fishermen and boaties. At night, pizza oven. Looking down on the roof of the smokehouse. Port Fitzroy at Great Barrier Island. Such a beautiful spot. And ta-da! Toilet.
Then over to Port Fitzroy for an ice cream.
Port Fitzroy. Young man on a pylon there on the wharf. Just past the boat on the right. There he goes. God's own paradise. Where Ma and Pa honeymooned.
Looks like the shop's up a hill though. I'm not
At
sure
the
about
Port Fitzroy guest house. Is it one of these places? Wherever it is, it was. This is stunning.
Lovely ones you're in.
As we left Port Fitzroy, there was a nice breeze, and we were debating whether to head back to Whangaparapara for the night or to carry on through to Coromandel on a night sail. So after a bit of discussion, with the lovely breeze on our backs and the Jenica hoisted, we headed for Coromandel.
It goes up in a bag first, and then the sail comes out of the bag.
That didn't sound scripted.
That's a pretty good photo.
The question is, do we want any more fish?
No, because we've got meatballs and things that have got to be ways.
Just thinking if I go and have a nap now, I might be able to do some tiller being charged with the boat at some point.
It's so funny, I was thinking about lying down as well.
Was it the same thing that you could be in charge of the boat at some point?
No. I was with the first half of it.
Oh, it's honey. Oh, sorry. Spelvini.
Belvany.
So
Wow.
that's a bigger.
Yeah, he's waving, he's waving.
That's the biggest of the Townsons.
Okay, that's pretty.
That's what I want.
That's what we
very
want.
pretty. Yeah, it's a whole different degree of boat, isn't it? Yeah.
Two bathrooms.
Half cabin.
Proper bathrooms with a shower and everything.
Wow, very nice.
The Jenica run lasted the whole way through the day, and we only dropped it at night for safety reasons, with still a good breeze on our tail for the next hour or two. During the night we had some great phosphorescence, and during the night the orcas turned up to investigate what was going on, much to the surprise of the women on the crew. We considered stopping off at Elephant Cove, but unfortunately the conditions were very unpleasant, so we carried on through and anchored behind an island just north of Coromandel. When the morning dawned, it revealed just how closely we had anchored to that island, still in very good water, but it did feel like we could step from the boat to the dinghy to the shore just about. That next day we explored Takuma Harbour and then into Coromandel to fill up the water tanks, and a journey into town in the dinghy.
The little shop of horrors. A horror shop. So you can see more. Taking a wee blast into Coromandel on the rubber ducky. The intrepid navigator.
Very poor navigator.
And co-pilot. And source of all happiness.
We followed the dredge channel into the town, which was easy going on the way in. Had a great afternoon messing about and enjoying milkshakes in Coromandel, and then headed back out to the boat. Unfortunately, during the course of our trip ashore, the tide had turned and the wind had picked up a little, so the trip back to the boat was a fairly breezy affair, with what seemed like half of Coromandel Harbour turning up in the dinghy.
It's also wet. Oh yeah. No. This
That night we anchored up behind one of the headlands in the Coromandel Harbour, and in spite of it being reasonably blowy, we had a fairly relaxed night of it. The next day we headed to Waiheke Island, and again with a lovely beam reach of about 15 knots, we were cranking along at a steady 7 to 9 knots. During the course of this day we managed to perform a man overboard drill for a party balloon floating around in the Gulf, which turns out to be not that uncommon.
Oh yeah, let's check it out. Yeah. Honey, can you crank up the genoa? Actually, possibly fill the genoa. You got the eyes on it? Weeble? I've lost it. Oh yeah. Motor on? Ah, it was this one, sir. Down here. Okay, hold the hand there, Joe.
And then a little later in the journey we started a man overboard drill for what turned out to be an unwilling recipient, a local seabird who decided to leave as we approached. But the run across to Waiheke was a lovely stretch with average of over 7 knots for the entire trip. And then rounding the top end of Waiheke, we had a fairly solid breeze on the nose. So it was half filled genoa and everybody sitting on the rail where possible. And after a few fairly rugged tacks, we anchored up in Palm Beach for a bit of a relax and to enjoy the beautiful sunshine that was still there and get to know one of the local Townsons. After leaving Palm Beach, we motored round to Sandy Bay and had a beautifully calm anchorage there and got to watch the local teenagers jumping off the neighbouring cliff. You could hear them egging each other on and working themselves into a frenzy as they got further up the cliff. The The next morning we moved the boat around to Little Oniroa, anchored up and went ashore and hired electric scooters for a day of exploring on the island, which was great fun. And for both couples having had lived on Waiheke, it was great to be able to get back to the old haunts and check out what had changed and what had stayed the same. Toward the end of the day, I met one of the locals, a bee, who stung me in the elbow, and I realised fairly quickly that I was going to need medical attention fairly rapidly, as my allergies were coming up at a rate that I'd never experienced before. I ended up in the local Red Cross A&E in Oniroa, who were great and helped get things under control very quickly. It still left me feeling like I'd had a high adrenaline moment, but for far more than a moment. It lasts for several hours afterwards. So on our sailing trip around the top of the island, whilst my brain was reasonably calm, my body was telling me that I still had a near miss of some variety or other, which was interesting to work my way through, but all worked out fine. That night was not ideal, with compounding issues of a very rolly bay for the night and a toilet that had broken.
While searching for the lost hat, we've discovered an epic sea cave. Well, sea arch. Very cute. That would be interesting to snorkel through.
So the next day was planned on the availability of public facilities, including a stop off at Rangitoto Island and a walk to the top there.
See you later.
Catch you, mate.
Enjoy your walk.
Will do. And then from Rangitoto, it was a lovely spinnaker run home back into town and put the boat away and wash her down. And so ended the trip. And as a footnote to the trip, she now has an electric toilet with a holding tank on board, which makes for a much more pleasant on-board experience.